Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
An O'Reilly Auto Parts gift card is the perfect gift for that hard-to-buy-for person. Give the gift of convenience from O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Welcome, friends. It's the MovieFilm Podcast. The MovieFilm Podcast. Enjoy the show. Jackie and Brian are talking about movies. MovieFilm Podcast on the radio. What is it?
It's your new pet. Number one, you gotta keep him out of bright light. Number two, keep him away from water.
It's incredible.
And probably the most important thing, don't ever feed him after midnight.
Billy, what are these things?
Gremlins.
That was Mrs. Deagle. I'll bet every kid in America would like to have one. They might even replace the dog as the family pet.
Welcome to a movie film commentary track. My name is Zaki Hassan. I'm here with Brian Hall.
Hey, how's it going, Zaki?
Brian, I feel like it's a test of character whether you know the three absolutely inviolable rules. Whenever I meet somebody, I say there are three rules, and you cannot defy them.
That's right. You do not talk about politics or religion at the dinner table.
Those are the less important rules.
Oh, well, fill me in. What are the more important rules? I need to know these.
Well, number one, never expose them to light.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get them wet.
Yes.
And most importantly, no matter how much they beg, do not feed them before noon.
Oh, okay. I did see it written out when I saw 12. So
I just assume.
I sure got the gist. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure if you follow those three exactly as I stated, everything will be fine.
Perfect.
So we're here to talk about Gremlins. Gremlins is a very specific memory. That's what I've realized, because I don't know that this is a movie that has transcended in the way that, for example, Back to the Future has.
I was thinking about that as I was watching it, because I feel like it's something everybody knows. Even when my parents are in town now because Christmas is upon us, and I mentioned that I was watching Gremlins, and Gremlins, yeah, but it's not something you see replayed on television a lot. I don't feel like you see as many toys.
Yeah.
There's certain toys that have transcended,
I was, as it happens, I was at Target a couple weeks ago, and I saw a gizmo in the toys for grown-ups, and I was absolutely delighted because of what you say. Like I would not have thought that you would see a thing such as that.
Yeah, I stand corrected. I mean, and he is such an iconic design, right? He's just immediately adorable. So much so that apparently later, Furby basically ripped him off. So
bastards.
But this was also one that I think I was a little young when it came out, like too young for it. So I kind of had to find it along the way.
Interesting.
I was a little bit older, like in my teens, I think, when I first saw it.
Oh, really?
Even though I was very familiar with it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, like it wasn't something I got from the video store. It's probably something I saw on television.
Okay.
And then it was like, and then probably the Steven Spielberg of it, presented.
Yeah,
so I was like, okay, this should be something I watch.
Well, with that in mind, speaking of something you should watch, why don't we start watching it?
Yes.
And then we can continue this conversation.
Let's.
So, folks, we are watching the 1984 original Gremlins. There's only one cut. It is the theatrical cut. So if you want to watch along with us, you're certainly welcome to do so. If not, hey, we'll try to keep this an interesting conversation, hopefully. Drop some factoids, some nuggets, some words of wisdom along what we've learned from a lifetime of battling gremlins.
Yes.
So let's do this thing. We'll do the usual thing. Hit play on 3. 1, 2, 3, play. Brian, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, play. So right up top, worth mentioning that this movie was the first one to bring back this classic Warner Brothers shield. And Warner Brothers liked the look so much that they brought it back for their other films. But before this, they had been using the kind of Art Deco looking, not really Art Deco, kind of a,
Like
you know what I'm talking about? It's like the three. What's that?
Like the Saul Bass.
Yeah, I was about to say, the Saul Bass looking thing. Yeah.
So yeah, interesting. I've never loved that one.
I'm not a fan.
It doesn't make me warm and fuzzy, where I'll say the Shield does.
Well, that's because that's what we grew up with, right?
Definitely. I mean, 100%. And then also, I don't know. There's something aesthetically nice about it. The blue and orange and the clouds. And
yeah,
I mean, it's definitely the one that I love the most. Yeah. And I know recently, I think with Barbie, now they have sort of a more updated version of it. And I'm like, no. Speaking of Warner Brothers, when you go on the Warner Brothers tour, they take you down a street, a fake city street, and they say, at the end of this is where Prince shot the image of him on the motorcycle in Purple Rain, and over here, this little staircase, this is the entrance to the shop in Gremlins, and
wow,
so kind of cool.
So Hoyt Axton as Randall Peltzer. As I do, I looked it up. You know how old he was in this movie?
Oh my gosh, how much? Or how
45.
45. So our age.
Our age, yeah. So
yeah.
So I rocketed right past Billy and ended up at Rand.
Wow. Well, and I saw that the mother is 39.
Wow.
And
okay.
Yeah, it's just interesting. In the 80s, they had people just old, of a certain age dressing more dowdy. Or
you know what's funny though? This is a testament to, I think, me just getting older. I watched this and I'm looking at Hoyt Axton over here. I'm like, man, that's a nice looking hat. That's what
yeah. It's funny you say that because, well, I know you do rock a fedora and you kill it.
Thank you.
Certain people can pull that off. But actually, this very shot we're looking at right now, when I watched this 2 nights ago, I did think, it's just a shame that we lost the fedora.
I agree.
Just by and large of, going into the office and taking off your fedora, there's something classy about it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Now, I don't have the subtitles on, but I think this gentleman is offering him Frogurt.
Which is cursed.
That's good. That's bad.
The topping is made of potassium benzoate.
That's bad.
I was watching this scene, and you have Key Luke as grandfather, and I was kind of like, is this racist? I was doing...
it's funny. I've seen think pieces on it.
Yeah.
And some could feel, these are sort of very generalized, stereotypical sorts of imagery we're seeing of an Asian man here with the pipe and, maybe slightly mystical. And then I've seen other people saying that maybe this is an allegory about how American culture tries to exploit other cultures,
Yeah. Well, I definitely had that thought watching this. I'm like, man, this is just America coming in. It's like, hey, I'm going to take this. It's like, no, you absolutely shouldn't. I'm going to take it anyway.
It is kind of funny. This boy's like, here, take it. And he's just like, yeah, all right. Even though your grandfather explicitly said no. He's like, sure, little kid. I'll take this from you.
He doesn't say like, well, no, Willie, we should check with your grandpa,
Exactly.
What's interesting though is that, especially, the way Hoyt Axton plays him, but Rand Peltzer is so lovable.
He's great. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that helps.
Oh yeah. He seems, well, did you read that Pat Hingle read for this role?
Really? Okay.
And they said he was really good, but his character is sort of a failed inventor.
Yeah.
And they said that Pat Hingle really leaned into the drama of that and it just made it sort of sad.
Oh.
And here, this guy is a little bit, he's not clumsy or goofy, but he's also, you can see he's frustrated, but he kind of keeps his chin up.
Right. He always sees the positive side.
Exactly. And they leaned toward that. And I think that makes sense.
I think that's the right tone.
Yeah. And by the way, another fun fact about him is that he was a songwriter.
That's right.
And he wrote Three Dog Night's Joy to the World.
Wow. I didn't know that, actually.
Isn't that incredible?
Wow.
Yeah. And I guess
Yeah,
he had been in the Black Stallion before this, which is where they noticed him.
Okay.
Which I haven't seen that in a long time. Did you ever show that to your kids?
Never shown it to my kid. I haven't seen it since the 80s, probably.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like that was something they even showed us in school. But
Yeah,
speaking
I
of a
think
movie that's been lost a little bit to time.
Yeah, right? I think Francis Coppola produced that, didn't he?
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, oh, shoot. The woman who wrote E.T. Shoot, I'm losing it. But she wrote that, and then she was dating
Melissa Matheson.
Melissa Matheson. I was thinking of anyway.
Just a nice little shout out to Steven Spielberg, by the way.
There's a lot of them in this town. It's kind of funny.
They should call it Spielbergville.
It is kind of funny. Well, here we got it.
Let's appreciate Hill Valley, by the way, here.
Hill Valley. Before it was Hill Valley.
That's right.
Right? And then we got a fun old-timey matte painting there to extend it and make it look like a Norman Rockwell kind of picture.
Yeah, I was watching this with my 11-year-old yesterday, and I was like, "Do you recognize that's Hill Valley?" And he goes, "Yeah, look, there's the courthouse." So he caught it.
It's so iconic.
Yeah.
I mean, now no matter what you watch, you can't help it.
Yeah.
I mean, because that clock tower becomes a character.
That's right.
In that film, right?
Every day when you log into ChumbaCasino.com, the ultimate online social casino, you get a free daily bonus. Imagine if you got daily bonuses in other parts of your life.
I chose French fries over loaded French fries.
I asked Stuart from accounting about his weekend, even though I don't care.
I updated my operating system without having to call tech support.
Collect your free daily bonus at ChumbaCasino.com now. And live the Chumba life.
VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Need parts now? O'ReillyAuto.com offers in-store pickup, same-day home delivery, or next-day home shipping. Get more parts your way at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Yeah, I was noticing that this was split up between Universal, this sort of town square, and then Warner Brothers. Because I had gone, and I mean, again, I know it's because of the tour, and we had gone as a family around the holidays. They dress it up like Stars Hollow from Gilmore Girls, so they make Luke's Cafe look like Luke's Cafe and whatever. But as we were going through there, and I hadn't seen Gilmore at the time, now I have, but and so I'm like, oh, I don't know any of this stuff. And then our tour guide's like, oh, and then that's the house where the old woman flies out the window in Gremlins. And I was like, oh. Check out my phone. Snap.
Now you're speaking my language.
Exactly. Yeah. I got to say here, this isn't like an actual criticism, but watching this specific scene here where we have the snow-covered car and the car won't start, and Billy's like, oh, and then his neighbor comes over and talks to him. I was like, this doesn't look cold. Like his jacket's kind of open, they're not hunched and like,
that is a great point. Yeah.
It feels like May in Southern California with some, dust, white something on the ground.
That's really funny. We've lived it. We know.
Yeah, we know.
I was watching this. I was like, man, Zach Galligan is really charming. He's such a good lead in this movie.
I agree.
It's a shame. He's never stopped working, but it's a shame. Like, he never really had a higher profile. Like, he's still like, oh, from Gremlins,
I'm a little surprised. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's very, very likable.
Yeah. I think that he's sort of a quintessential 1980s lead character where he's kind of straight and narrow, good guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he embodies that well, that sort of that archetype.
Yeah.
Hey, it's that guy, Dick Miller.
Yes. Well, he's in every Joe Dante movie, I think, right? Pretty much.
He not in every, but in many.
Well, not literally.
Well, and he had a good year this year because he was also in The Terminator in 1984.
Oh, that's right. Wait, we have to point out that marquee there in the theater. So, Watch the Skies was the original title of Close Encounters, and A Boy's Life was the original title of E.T.
Look at that.
So, little Spielberg Easter eggs in there. It's funny. I remember when Ready Player One came out, people were like, "Is this too
Brian?
self-referential?"
You know what would make this scene work better? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah.
If you had Power of Love playing in the background.
Exactly. That's the theme of this square Just anytime you walk through this square, no matter what movie, by law, you should. I would love that.
Anyway, sorry, you were saying.
Well, no, I was just going to say people were sort of wondering if Ready Player One was too self-referential because the story inherently is a love letter to Spielberg's sort of movies, and then to have Spielberg make it, was that too? Is he the right guy to make that film?
Yeah.
And it's just funny because, I mean, it's always sort of been that way. Even 1941 opens with a Jaws parody. You know, you got him producing this movie, and there's like a lot of Spielberg-y nods in here. So sort of always been like that. So I was also going to say there was a story I came across a lot researching this movie, which was about Zach Galligan's audition with, I guess he was reading opposite Phoebe Cates. And
he was like humming.
Well, sort of. He was very goo goo eyes.
Yeah.
And I guess the quote I saw everywhere I read about it was Spielberg was like, look at it. Like he's in love with her. Like we've got to cast him.
Okay. In that case, I should have played Billy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Like as if it's very difficult. That was before they yelled action. Yeah. I mean, Phoebe Cates, she's just iconic 80s, beautiful, just, yeah. You know, Fast Times obviously was 2 years before this. And I guess that was another thing with Warner Brothers. They thought, is she wholesome enough for this role? Because, you know, her role had, you know, she has a famous scene in Fast Times. But she's great in this.
Yeah.
Married to Kevin Kline, which I think.
Yeah, and she just like stopped acting.
Yeah, to raise her family.
Which good for her. I say, you know.
Yeah.
If you can get out of the hellscape that is Hollywood and just, you know, be content.
Yeah, not feel any pressure to like, just live your life the way you choose to live it.
Exactly.
You know, this is interesting. This there's, if I remember correctly, there's sort of inference about what's going on and what Miss Deagle does in this town here. It's not quite explicit. We just know that she's not very forgiving to people who owe her money. I think later we see a real estate sign.
Yeah, basically she's trying to sell the land to some like developer.
Yeah, she's like a Mr. Potter-esque character.
That's right.
And it's funny because I was reading that the original cut of this, so this movie's about an hour 45. The original cut was over 2.5 hours. And I was like, what?
It can get lonely climbing Mount McKinley, so to entertain myself, I go to ChumbaCasino.com. At Chumba Casino, I can play hundreds of online casino-style games for free, like online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Plus, I get a daily login bonus. It's just too bad that up here, I don't have anyone to share my excitement with. Woohoo!
Live the Chumba life. Anytime, anywhere. Play for free now at ChumbaCasino.com.
VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Got great ideas, but no idea how to build a website? Get Bluehost. Their AI design tool creates high-quality WordPress sites super fast. Whether you're a blogger, influencer, or launching a side hustle, Bluehost helps boost your growth with built-in marketing and e-commerce tools. Upgrade to cloud to get 100% uptime and 24/7 security to stay online all the time. Why wait? You've got the vision. Make it real. Visit Bluehost.com to get started.
Could that possibly be?
Yeah.
And basically you read that there was a lot more story. You know, like Judge Reinhold's character had an entire arc.
Yeah, he just disappears after like the 15-minute mark, right?
Well, and I was going to say that it sort of, to me, shows that they made the correct decision.
I agree.
Where there are certain movies where you think, well, why did that guy just show up and not come back? And
right.
And they really did have, it seems like, a lot of story going on in this town and these characters and the way that they interacted and growth and whatnot. But at the end of the day, this movie, what you want to see is gremlins in the snow in little clothes singing Christmas carols.
That's right.
Right? Like, I think they got that. And so they whittled it down to exactly what we wanted to see for exactly the right amount of time we wanted to see it. And we don't miss Judge Reinhold's character's catharsis later in the film. You know?
And you can see the deleted footage. I believe it's online.
I'd like to see it. I haven't seen it.
So this too, I mean, Judge Reinhold, this same year as Beverly Hills Cop. So,
which was the #1 movie of '84. I think this was the 4th highest grossing movie of 1984.
Yeah, man, I'll tell you, it was the hype train was real because I remember I was a kid, and that summer when we came to the States, we got Gremlins toys, and I remember when I was at school, I checked out the Gremlins storybooks and everything. Like I knew the world. I had read the novelization. Like it was very, very culturally ubiquitous. There's Chuck Jones, by the way, on the right.
I love how he's basically like, "You're gonna make it someday, Billy," and then the camera just kind of moves past him. Like, I love it. So I guess him and Joe Dante are friends.
They were friends, and that was at least part of the reason why Joe Dante directed Looney Tunes Back in Action. Because Chuck Jones, before he died, was not thrilled with Space Jam.
Okay, like the way that the Looney Tunes were characterized.
Yeah, he said it sort of betrayed their essence, even though I believe Dante is a producer on that. And so Joe Dante had said, like, he took on Looney Tunes Back in Action as a way of protecting Chuck's legacy.
That rings a bell, because I think I remember Chuck Jones saying that Bugs Bunny wouldn't call on anyone for help.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the plot is him, of course, calling on Michael Jordan.
Which, of all people, of course he would call on Michael Jordan for help,
Yeah, if it involves basketball.
Which, by the way, let me just say, Looney Tunes Back in Action, which is a movie that Dante has basically disowned, it's not a bad movie. It's actually pretty decent.
That's my memory of it. I've only seen it once, but I remember it. It's not going to live on like a Roger Rabbit or something, but it's, if you like the Looney Tunes, it's fun.
And I will say, in terms of like the marriage of live action and animation, it easily competes with what Roger Rabbit accomplished.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of those, like, it's been lost to the mists of time, but anybody listening to this, it's a decent movie. I think if you like the Looney Tunes characters, you'll enjoy it.
Yeah. By the way, I have to point this. Oh, this is funny. A Chris Columbus tick in his writing, which is just like something around a household getting knocked over. So you think of Home Alone, and they always bump that little statue out front, and here we have the swords falling off the wall.
That's here's It's a Wonderful Life.
Yep. Yeah, which also features in a lot of Chris Columbus movies. But I wanted to point out real quick this little moment in the bar that I really loved, and then I read about it later. I guess Phoebe Cates was talking to Zach Galligan and saying, when you're acting, you always want to give your character something interesting to do. Uh-huh. And so then she picked something up off the ground and put it on his shoulder. And then in that scene where Judge Reinhold is hitting on her, she turns to Billy and then picks that little thing off his shoulder. Which is a really great character moment, because you see where her, loyalty lies, or
that's
her
great
affections, and it's very sweet. It immediately, in my mind, makes me think, "Oh, I love these two together."
That's great.
Yeah, it's pretty smart.
So this movie started out. Sorry, as you're talking about Chris Columbus, it was a spec script that he wrote.
Yes,
and it was like hard R horror.
Yes, like the mother gets decapitated.
She gets decapitated. The Gremlins eat Barney.
Yes, eat the dog. And I guess there's like a scene in McDonald's where you see them inside the McDonald's, but then when it cuts inside, they're not eating the food; they're eating the customers.
Right? And it's so. This is we say this a lot, but like this is the Spielberg of it all, right?
Yes,
and so many times his instincts are so dead on, where he's like, this is not that movie.
Because then you do that, and you could end up with like Ghoulies.
I was thinking exactly that. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Like that box at the video store where you're like, what is that? And then you walk past it.
Well, and the other thing, as written originally, Gizmo becomes Spike.
Mm-hmm.
And Spielberg, again, man, like the guy just instinctually, he's like, no, audiences are not going to want that.
Yep. And then, I mean, along that train, it was Billy.
Spike. Sorry, did I say Spike? Stripe, I meant.
Stripe, yeah. But at the end, it was going to be Billy who saved the day, which you can kind of understand as a writer.
Yeah.
But Spielberg was like, no, it has to be Gizmo.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these are his people. He's going to stop his people. And I was like, yeah, his instincts, like you said. And it makes sense. From a writer perspective, I do sort of see the friend turned enemy thing. I can see that version where Gizmo becomes Stripe, but he's so cute, we don't want to lose him.
Yeah, exactly.
It is kind of nice then that he's the one who takes care of everything at the end of the day, even though he didn't start it, but he's the one who will stop it. I mean, this design is just undeniable.
It's genius. It's genius. I mean, it is iconic.
Yeah. Sort of bated breath waiting for him to show his face here. But he is just
who did not want a Gizmo after watching this movie? You know?
I still want a Gizmo. Yeah. And then, of course, Howie Mandel as his squeaky little voice.
Yeah. Doing a dry run for Bobby's World.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess I read somewhere, I don't know if this is, sort of becoming legend or whatever, making things up, but the rule about light, not having them in light, had to do with making it easier to hide cables and strings and puppet them.
That's interesting.
Which makes sense.
I mean, it does, but also like it's so intrinsic to the story, right? Like,
yeah. Well, it helps too. Yeah, it makes you wonder what they're going to do on the 4th of July. Like the poor thing has to be left in a room with the blinds shut, But it does also allow the movie to be sort of moody,
right?
And creepy,
It's so cute.
Oh my gosh, he's so adorable.
Man, practical puppets, there's just something magical there.
I know they're limiting, like in a lot of ways, but it's just so much more effective.
Yeah.
Seeing him curled up into his dad right there with that little scared expression on his face shaking,
Yeah.
And they could do a sequel now and have thousands of Gremlins.
That's right.
But it seems like that was sort of the point of contention where it's like, no, if we do this, we need it to have the the same sort of tactility and the puppetry and the charm of the originals. And I don't know. I know they did do an animated series that was on.
Yeah, I think it's still
Max.
going.
Yeah.
The Secrets of the Mogwai. See, what's interesting, if you look at Gizmo, there's something vaguely evilish on his face.
I noticed it mostly in this
Right
scene. He looks a little different in this scene.
Yeah, well, I think at this point there was still like it was the Stripe version.
Ah, that makes a little sense.
Right?
Yeah, because later, or for most of the film, he doesn't have that little, I don't know what you'd call it, like a sharper sort of expression on his eyes here where...
Now I should say in the novelization, my recollection, I read this a while ago, but they explained that the Mogwai were created by aliens.
Oh, interesting.
And that what they found was that only 1 out of every 10,000 remained docile and cute.
Oh.
And so they were disposed of, and somehow Gizmo ends up on Earth. And I'm like, well, I don't like that.
No, it kind of makes me think of that Ancient Aliens meme. That guy,
yeah,
he's like aliens.
Like I don't need Gizmo to be an alien. I need Gizmo to be. We don't know what Gizmo is. He's just Gizmo.
I kind of agree. I'd rather it feel a little more. That just feels like a catch-all. Aliens, something you can't explain. Like I'd rather it be like, well, he comes from a remote area that's been untouched by humans.
It can get lonely climbing Mount McKinley, so to entertain myself, I go to ChumbaCasino.com. At Chumba Casino, I can play hundreds of online casino-style games for free, like online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Plus, I get a daily login bonus. It's just too bad that up here, I don't have anyone to share my excitement with. Woohoo!
Live the Chumba life. Anytime, anywhere. Play for free now at ChumbaCasino.com.
VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Messing with them, and they know how to exist and take care of themselves. But when you bring them, into people who can't be responsible, this is what you get.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Just people ruining everything.
Yeah.
So that's a great shot right there with the juice maker just looming in the foreground.
Like you'd rather not use it.
That's great.
Yeah. This is one of those things too where you imagine like you want to get it right because you don't want to have to reset this set after they basically blow up all this orange juice everywhere.
That's right.
Do you recognize that glass, by the way? That is a very 1980s glass. I remember a lot of my friends.
Totally.
Yep. I have definitely drunk out of that glass. And Corey Feldman. Very young Corey Feldman here.
Yeah, well, this is what got him the gig on Goonies.
Yeah, apparently he auditioned for E.T.
Okay.
And I thought I had heard somewhere that as they were developing the script, there was an extra kid.
Okay.
And they decided to just make all the focus on Elliot.
Okay.
And so then they, went with Henry Thomas, and Spielberg promised Feldman, like, we'll get something for you, because he saw there was something there, and then put him in Gremlins, and of course, Goonies and
Stand By Me.
Yeah, I mean, he's the '80s, one of the greats.
Yeah, he's in Burbs also, right?
Yes, that's right. Oh, yeah. Wow, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
The Dante connection. Yeah, they must have hit it off. I mean, he's quite young here, but I mean, isn't that funny? It's less than a decade, but he seems so much older in the Burbs than here.
Yeah, weird, right?
Really young. Yeah. I thought I read somewhere else, and I couldn't see it. I only saw it in one spot, but they said that Billy was originally going to be a little younger, and so that's
sense.
Where the Feldman, as sort of his buddy, comes in. Because here it just seems like Billy is probably like 20 or something, maybe, having the job he has, and
I assume he's like 18.
Yeah, out of high school, right? Because he goes back to visit that teacher.
Yeah, so just out of high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always liked the relationship. It's like a cool older brother,
Yeah, I remember having people like that in my neighborhood where it was like, oh yeah, the kid who's older who was like nice, and you kind of looked up to him.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't get to it earlier, but there's that moment where Billy reflects the mirror on him, and then the light makes Gizmo fall off, and then we see his legs kicking in the garbage can.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fun watching the practical ways they switch out the puppet. So the camera is sort of pushing in on his little legs, and then it tilts up to Billy, and so you can do like a little Texas switch, right? Like you leave the leg kicking robot down there, and then you pick up a different one into frame. So it's like, well, this one wiggles its legs. This one has expressions. This one, it's very clever how they execute all this. And this is another thing too. I was thinking about, the rules.
See, it'd be funny right here if Billy just went ape shit on like, God damn it, you idiot!
Where are you done? Yeah.
Get out!
Yeah. But only in this scene.
Yeah, he's totally mellow the whole rest of the movie.
Yeah, but this is kind of fun. These sort of like, I mean, clearly that's like a hole in the desk and like a balloon covered in fur or something.
See, I was looking at these comics. I was like, man, those are some vintage comics. And I was like, oh wait, those were like present day comics back then.
Really?
I'm vintage, not the comics.
But yeah, I guess that was a much bigger plot point in the longer version about him being a cartoonist.
Yeah.
Here it's just flavor. But it works for me.
Yeah, I think the world is fleshed out enough that the characters aren't just ciphers by the time we get to all the gremlininess of it all.
Mm-hmm. We talk about this sometimes, but with animals in movies, they don't know they're in a movie. They're just standing somewhere. There happens to be cameras and weird things are happening around them. And it's kind of funny watching this dog look at these things.
What is he thinking?
Yeah, you got to wonder,
I do love when we get like the reaction shot of Gizmo.
Hey, it is Ryan Seacrest. There's something so thrilling about playing Chumba Casino. Maybe it's the simple reminder that with a little luck, anything is possible. ChumbaCasino.com has hundreds of social casino-style games to choose from with new game releases each week. Play for free anytime, anywhere for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Oh, like nervous?
Yeah, like I mean, you get such a clear sense of what a puppet is feeling, you know?
Yeah. Oh, here he has. Yeah, it's kind of like despair because
Yeah.
he knows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He knows what's coming.
It's kind of funny how quickly Feldman's character is like, oh, yeah, amazing. He's just
See, look at Gizmo right there. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Look at that.
He's so expressive.
I know. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, this is Hoyt Axton here. Like this moment here, there's just the right amount of sadness. Like as a grown, I don't even know if it would have clocked with me as much as a kid, but as a grown up here, I feel a little bad for him.
Yeah, right.
You know, things not working in front of his son, and but then here, he picks himself back up. Hey, check this out. He's all excited about it.
Yeah, I think there's something sort of there's a stick-to-itiveness that is either admirable or depressing.
He's still okay. On that note, I never really thought about it very much, but there's that scene where the mother is chopping, I think, onions, and she's watching It's a Wonderful Life, or it's potatoes. I actually can't tell, but she seems sad,
right?
And she blames it on the movie. I thought it was maybe the onions, but it seems like she's really internalizing something, which I think is their life.
Yeah,
and I never realized how kind of sad that is till actually this recent viewing.
Yeah, I mean, I again, it's like at 45, if you're still trying to have the bathroom buddy sell,
Yeah,
maybe you need to rethink your choices a little bit,
Yeah, which is good motivation then when he realizes, well, if we could sell this, the Peltzer pet.
Yeah,
it makes sense. That's so adorable.
Yeah.
Is that Gizmo playing the trumpet there? Like really happy under the tree? Because they throw something at him, I think. Acting like jerks. That's why I thought it was.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. I wasn't certain, but it is so adorable how happy he is playing that little trumpet.
Yeah, that's Gizmo.
Yeah. Oh, and he's so sad.
I know.
They're so mean to him. But even that, I mean, the acting on those puppets where he's like looking over, like, did I hurt his feelings? Good. And then he goes back to the video game, like, It's just so simple, but so expressive. And it's smart because the others, they go way further with it in part 2, where they, you have a googly-eyed gremlin, you have a female gremlin, you have this gremlin. But this one, they do sort of look similar, but it's nice you have Stripe. It's like, and I've noticed it seems like ADR because you never see him actually say it with his mouth, but he'll be like, oh, that's Stripe. That's the leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it gives you can identify.
People give the sequel a lot of shit, for, obviously we got a whole Key and Peele sketch out of it, right? Like all the crazy ideas that they had for it. And Joe Dante has said, like, no, that's very accurate, like in terms of how they came up with the ideas for part 2.
That's hilarious.
But like the truth is, the second one is not that far removed from this one tonally.
I don't. It's funny because I think this one feels a little bit more in reality. Except, like,
yes. Well, here. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
yeah.
In terms of the human characters sort of acting like regular human beings, yes, realistic.
Yes.
But in terms of the gremlins and the way they are sort of cartoonish,
yes, and that they have little clothes that are tailored to them, and you have like the flasher, like Gremlin. Where did he get that trench coat?
Exactly.
So it's like they take that part of it, and then say, let's run with that. Right. Yeah. It's funny because I mean I'd seen this one numerous times before I saw the second one. I think I found the second one a little jarring in just how much of a Looney Tunes cartoon it is, and I would like to revisit it.
Yeah, I like it. I remember. So this movie came out in 1984. I think I saw it in 1987 is my recollection. I was visiting Toronto, and my cousins, Haris and Hamza, who listen to the show, I watched it at their house. but I knew the story very, very well because I had read the book and I knew it.
Mm-hmm.
And then Gremlins 2 was what, 90, right?
Yeah.
So relatively shortly thereafter. And so I wasn't watching it with, like, I remember watching it and being like, oh, this is funny. And I wasn't like, how dare they be funny? I was like, oh, it's funny,
Right.
So I just sort of onboarded it, maybe just because I was young. I don't know, but I've always enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think I would approach it differently now, especially, Joe Dante letting his freak flag fly, and like following his passions and his love for, Looney Tunes cartoons and things like that. I think for me, what I love about this, and we talk about this a lot, is why all these 80s movies really appeal to me is I love this magic in your own backyard type of yarn.
Yeah.
And this movie feels a little bit more like that, whereas the second one feels like a slightened, heightened reality. With the futuristic building and sort of the funny hats that they wear as employees there, and
a little more cynical.
Yeah, a little more cynical, a little more fantastical, just the reality itself. But I think knowing that, so I think I was jarred when I went from this one to that one. But I think now that I know that, I might enjoy it for its own personality.
Yeah.
More.
Yeah. Well, I watched this yesterday with my 11-year-old, and he's like, oh, can we watch the second one tomorrow? And I'm like, yeah. So I guess I'll be watching it in a couple hours.
Great. Actually, I would love to know what he thinks.
Yeah. Like I think that I think that there is a in the second one, where you have like the people who save the day are Billy, Mr. Futterman, right? So there is sort of an implied like, oh, small town values are still gonna beat out, all them city folk,
Sure. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I can see that as a take, definitely. Well, here we're getting a little bit where we're having this guy, the Futterman talking about World War II, right? And that's kind of where the notion of Gremlins began.
Yeah. So here's my question: were those actual gremlins like in this movie?
Oh, that's a good point. Are they even gremlins, or is it are we appropriating
exactly right? That's my question.
Yeah, to whatever these little monsters.
That's what I want. You know how they keep talking about the USS Indianapolis movie for Jaws, like a prequel?
Yes,
I want the Mr. Futterman prequel with the gremlins.
Zachy, that could be a really fun movie. That could be. Speaking of one of those things, I mean, obviously I'd prefer it in the theaters, but when they were trying to come up with stuff straight to Max or whatever, dude, there you go. There you go. Make this World War II adventure and then, fighting the gremlins. I would love that.
And have that adventure somehow intersect with the USS Indianapolis prequel.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Let's connect all the universes. Yeah. It's a Spielberg universe.
That's right.
Yeah. But I mean, to get specific, I guess it's in when there was mechanical failure with aircraft or machinery in the war. I guess it sort of began in the RAF.
Yes, that's right.
The UK, but they would blame like, oh, there must be a gremlin in the machine.
Yeah,
messing with the internal machinery, making it mess up, and so that's where. And then Roald Dahl, who was
real quick right there, where sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. She's like, I don't celebrate Christmas. He's like, what are you, Hindu or something?
Yeah, I know. It's like the attitude. He's very as sweet as he is. He's a little insensitive in this scene. I mean, not just for that specifically, but just like, what's the matter?
That's they have these little things that like it's like that SNL with the old PSAs where he's like, smoking, that's gay.
Oh, right, yeah, yeah. Like how immediately dated certain things are from certain work. Yeah, but it's like you would think a sensitive person would say, "Oh, well, why is that?"
You're right.
Instead of, what's the matter with you? Are you a Hindu or something? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, dude. That's hilarious.
But this is really sweet. He's so like, I don't know. Look at her. They're both freaking adorable in this scene. So like wide. And look at that sort of like.
See, and then out of nowhere, he's like, "Can you take off your shirt?" Because he watched Fast Times at Ridgemont High. So.
And then Warner Brothers is like, "See." I'm like, oh, poor Phoebe Cates.
Hey, it's Ryan Seacrest. Life comes at you fast, which is why it's important to find some time to relax. A little you time. Enter Chumba Casino. With no download required, you can jump on anytime, anywhere for the chance to redeem some serious prizes. So treat yourself with Chumba Casino and play over 100 online casino-style games, all for free. Go to ChumbaCasino.com to collect your free welcome bonus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Good times.
So sweet. Anyway, so yes, but Roald Dahl was in the RAF, and then he would know this whole sort of like joking around that people would say about Gremlins, and then he wrote a book called The Gremlins. And I guess at some point, Walt Disney wanted to make it into a movie.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then there's a Bugs Bunny cartoon about gremlins on an airplane.
That I remember seeing, and I saw that after this movie, and I was like, "That's not what gremlins look like."
Yeah. And this actor, I don't have his name right off the top.
See, now this is interesting because, like, you know, with Mrs. Deagle, like the movie is setting her up to get her uppance.
Yes.
With Mr. Hansen, you know, the whole needle thing, it's supposed to be like ironic death.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, it's not like he's torturing the guy, you know?
You know, it's funny because, yeah, he never comes across as sinister. And I had read, I don't know if they filmed it or if it was in the script, but it was originally going to be he had a bunch of needles sticking out of his face. And he was dead.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, what we get is we don't even see his face. He's on his front, and we see a needle in his butt, which feels appropriate to the tone of this movie.
Yeah.
But yeah. Although it does, they do make it look kind of like it hurts.
Yeah.
Poor little guy. He's like, "What are you doing?" Sticking that in his arm. And you think about it, that is a long needle for as big as that little Mogwai is. This is a great little twist here with the midnight thing.
Yeah.
Checking the clock, and then you realize later that they ripped the cord. Look at that. I love that. That's so creepy. The way they're watching him and their heads are all turning in sync. And look at the whispering and the conspiring. It's so good.
I mean, the whole after midnight thing doesn't make a lick of sense.
Which I guess is what 2 sort of gets into, like, right? Let's just have fun with this and make fun of the premise itself.
Yes, that's right.
Because characters in that film are even like, well, wait a minute. What if you're on an airplane?
It's always midnight somewhere.
Yeah, or you're crossing a time zone. And it's like, yeah. Or what if you have something stuck in your teeth? And then it happens to come out like it's... But, you know, I don't know. Maybe nowadays, if this movie came out, people would immediately pick it apart on TikTok or something. But there's something like when you're a kid or whatever, you just, okay, not after midnight. Got it.
Yeah.
Like you just go with it. I don't know.
No, well, you are right, but it also just makes me think how like this movie came out at the perfect time for it to have this kind of real cultural sway.
Yeah,
you know, like I don't know that could happen today. Like something brand new, not like Gremlins, the Legacy sequel or whatever, but just like something new like this. I don't know that it would sort of capture people's fancy the way this did.
And I don't know why that is. I've complained for years. Probably about like the duration of the existence of this podcast, but I feel like movie aliens are less and less iconic. And I think it's almost because there are no limitations.
Yeah.
You know, so then they make them super fanciful and then they are less memorable than your ETs or your whatever, or your gizmos. And I don't know. Yeah. It's hard to imagine a new movie coming out and a new creature and it taking the world by storm the way that this did. But that could, there's a lot of factors to that. I mean, the world has just changed the way that we take in.
By the way, this is Invasion of the Body Snatchers right here that Billy's watching.
So yeah, I don't know. And, another interesting fact is that this was released on the same day as Ghostbusters in 1984.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Same day.
Same day.
And Ghostbusters ended up doing better than this.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious because, yes, I know there was like I said, this was 4th place for the year. I know it must have been because I think it was Beverly Hills Cop, Temple of Doom somewhere in there, and then probably Ghostbusters, then this. But it's funny, like these sort of family movies, kids movies, but there are these horror comedies that kind of push it a little bit.
Yeah.
Like that's what we were subject to growing up.
And of course, famously, this movie and Temple of Doom were what led to the creation of the PG-13.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine that leap, like PG to R?
Right. I mean, that's a couple of thoughts. Number one, I was watching this yesterday and I'm like, it's pretty tame.
Yeah. Really the only gross thing is with the mother. Right? With
the microwave.
The microwave. And
I guess that, there were folks who were worried that kids would put their pets in a microwave.
Right.
And I'm not discounting that that's a possibility, but I'm also like, well, kids love their pets. Gremlins are the bad guys. Like,
yeah. And that plays into the thing that I keep saying that I like too, where it's like, what if there was a monster? You're not on another planet and you don't have a proton pack or something like that, right? You're like, what if you were in your kitchen? And, something you understand. There's a monster, so you shove it in the microwave like you would everything else. And like, I love using things that we understand against supernatural things. That's always delighted me.
Well, just this scene that we were just seeing right there with Glenn Turman has the gremlin egg in his office, and the normalcy of just like a high school classroom juxtaposed with this H.R. Giger looking thing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But yes, I mean, the PG-13 thing. You can imagine. I guess I did watch the trailer for this, and they don't reveal the look of the creatures.
By the way, right behind White Axton there, that's Jerry Goldsmith. There's Steven Spielberg right in front of him.
Yeah. And then there's a funny gag with the time machine in the background.
Yep, right there. You see it, yeah.
And so,
by the way, sorry, I want to get back to what you're saying, but with Jerry Goldsmith there, we have to say this is such a great Goldsmith score.
It's the perfect tone.
What occurred to me listening to it is it's the most John Williams score that Jerry Goldsmith has ever done.
Oh, interesting.
It feels very, in terms of orchestration, he was almost like inspired by the Spielbergness to be very Williamsy,
Well, that could be Spielberg pushing for that, because I know when Zemeckis talks about making Back to the Future, he wanted to use Alan Silvestri because he had used him on Romancing the Stone. They had hit it off, but Spielberg was like, no, you need like a score. You need he was very specific about what the score needed to sound like. And then Silvestri did what he did, and Spielberg was like, oh, okay, that's fine. So maybe here, he was like, no, it's got to sound like this. Although we do get these random, with Mrs. Deagle especially, this very early 80s synth sound, which doesn't match the rest of the score.
Yeah, and I suppose, it works in the movie.
Yeah.
But it doesn't listen well if you put the album on,
Yeah. We should note this, the school movie they're showing here is Hemo the Magnificent.
Okay.
Which I guess sort of kicked off an era of these sort of educational films that incorporated animation and sort of the style that we see parodied a lot on like The Simpsons and things we grew up with.
Yeah.
You know who wrote and directed this school film, Hemo the Magnificent?
Tell me.
Frank Capra.
Wow.
Wrote and directed that.
So a couple Capra homages in this movie.
Yeah. And Mel Blanc does a voice in it, and June Foray, and
that is really random. Wow.
Weirdly iconic little educational film.
Yeah.
I mean, this stuff looks so good. These like sacks opening up. I love how there's lights inside, even though that makes no sense.
Right.
But I love it.
I mean, you don't question it.
No. And poor little Gizmo watching on inside that helmet. But I mean, again, I don't want to gloss over the whole PG-13-ness of this, where it's, in the advertising, they didn't show the creatures. It's from Steven Spielberg, who just made E.T. The poster basically shows a boy holding a box with these furry little hands sticking out of it. And so apparently, a lot of parents take their 5-year-olds to see this and are like, good Lord.
Good generational trauma.
Yeah, and then also the same summer, Temple of Doom, which I think to this day remains shocking in its violence.
Yes, like that one is easier to understand, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah. And so a lot of upset parents. So Steven Spielberg himself proposes PG-13 to the MPAA.
See, I think Spielberg should have been like Michael Jordan, been like, F them kids. They got to learn sometime.
Yeah, exactly. About lava sacrifice.
That's right. Hey, if not now, then when?
Yeah. Have you seen The Howling, by the way?
I have not seen The Howling.
Yeah, apparently that was what put Dante on Spielberg's radar, and then they, I guess, collaborated in the Twilight Zone movie.
Yes, that's right.
Which he has that funny segment, right, with the boy who has holds the powers over everybody.
That's right. Yeah,
all the adults. And Nancy Cartwright is one of the people in that.
It's the remake of It's a Good Life.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Gizmo just like,
oh no. Yeah, but I thought that was interesting too, because if The Howling caught Spielberg's eye, Dee Wallace is in that. So you wonder if he's like, oh, who's that? And then cast her as Mary in E.T. a year after that.
Wow, yeah. Joe Dante, like we've talked about, such a unique voice that it's a crying shame that he has essentially been either by choice or sort of just by fiat been excommunicated from studio pictures.
Yeah, he definitely has a voice, and it's a really fun horror voice, and it feels very unique to me. And we were saying before we even started, it's surprising he doesn't have like a streaming series that's in his voice or something these days.
His last movie was Looney Tunes Back in Action. I think before that, Small Soldiers.
Wow, I've never seen Small Soldiers.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's good. I would not recommend it, but I think it is interesting. I think the way that technology is used in that movie, it's like that's really cool, But the movie itself is kind of a swing and a miss. But
and it's Gremlins-esque, right? It's like
very much
little figures coming to life and terrorizing people.
Very, very much so. Yeah, and you can see that that's probably the influence, but I think it's just studio interference, right? Because I think there's probably like, oh, we can sell the toys or whatever, and you're not letting him just make the movie that he needs to make, But you see how his sensibilities just sort of fell out of step with executive thinking, or
Yeah.
I mean, it's ironic because Looney Tunes Back in Action, the whole thing, the plot hinges on the studio making a stupid decision, and then like that's the story in the movie,
right?
And that's literally what the studio did with regards to that movie,
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where I was thinking, watching this, right, and it's so of the moment, and it really captured the zeitgeist, and I was like, this is it's just the story of every filmmaker. I don't think any filmmaker is immune to this, where you'll have that window, and maybe it's a short window, maybe it's a long window, where everything you do hits.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually you just kind of fall out of favor.
It's someone else's turn.
Yeah. And, even Spielberg to some extent is in that place right now.
Yeah. He's one of those rare people who's just sort of grandfathered in, where he'll always get to make what he wants, but his movies don't, take the world by storm like they used to.
Yeah, that's right. Like right now is kind of Christopher Nolan's moment, right?
Yes, 100%.
And like everything, that moment is going to pass.
Yes.
That's just the nature of these things,
Yep. Well, he's not said specifically, but almost said as much, where he's said, people ask him, are you ever going to make your small little indie movie? And he's like, no, I realize the privilege I have where I can make movies at the budget that I can.
Yeah.
At this sort of scale. So it's almost like incumbent upon me.
Yeah.
To exercise that privilege.
Do it while you can.
Do it while you can. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like you realize this the longer you're around and you see the arcs of these filmmakers' careers.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a poor little gizmo on the dartboard.
It is interesting how they torment Gizmo, but they're like neighborhood bullies. Like they're not hurting him.
Like they don't kill him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Like it's not like he's family. Yeah, he sucks, but he's family kind of thing,
Yeah, I never really thought about that, but you're right. Yeah, they pick on him.
Yeah.
But they don't hurt him.
Yeah. That's interesting,
Yeah, that is. I didn't think about that. So, Frances Lee McCain playing the mother here. Do you recognize her from another movie?
I feel like I should.
That is Lorraine's mom in Back to the Future.
Yes. Okay, I knew.
Now, Marty.
Yep. Wow. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. Everybody needs some variety in life. That's what I love about Chumba Casino. They know how to keep things fresh and exciting. All their games are free to play, like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire. You can claim free daily login bonuses, too. And they release new games every week. So spice things up with ChumbaCasino.com now for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
She got to go right back to that square.
I'm as I'm watching this, I'm realizing one thing that, like, I was living overseas when this movie came out, and very much the notion in my head of like a typical suburban house was the Peltzer house.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And it is about as quintessential as it gets, like in terms of like what an 80s suburban house looked like,
It is funny. I'm going to attribute it to Spielberg kicking it off, but making the suburbs, it's like movies take place generally, if you're going to make a movie, they take place in New York. They take place in Los Angeles, with Hughes, Chicago, with Spielberg, the suburbs, right? The suburbs are like a capital letter location for him. So much so, and it's endured so long that now we have, Star Wars, Skeleton Crew, the series, and they have a Star Wars version of the suburbs because they're intentionally trying to evoke that 80s feel. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. And this is kind of like where I grew up. So it obviously struck a chord with me.
And yet, amazingly, you did not see this movie all the way through until the 90s.
Yeah, that's very possible. Yeah. Or maybe the late 80s when the sequel was about to come out and it was on TV or something. But it was something I knew. I knew the box from the video store.
Yeah.
And you jogged a memory. I do remember the storybook at the school library. But yeah.
Yeah, I remember at my school there was these it was like the story of the movie for kids, but it was like these little picture books, and each book told a portion of the story. So you had to check out, whatever, five or six of them in order to get the whole movie,
Oh, interesting. So it'd be from Gizmo's point of view. It'd be from Billy's point of view. It'd be from...
No, it wasn't even that. It was like this book is from when Mr. Peltzer buys Gizmo to and now Billy and Gizmo are friends, and that's like your first book, like that.
Right, I see.
But in the books, whatever, they were like 20, 25 pages, something like that. So I remember those. I remember checking all of those out and reading them. So I was probably like 5.
Yeah.
And like I said, I remember that summer when we had come to the States, we got it was like a multi-pack of little figurines, and it was like Stripe as a Mogwai, Gizmo, and Stripe as a Gremlin, and like a generic Gremlin or something like that. It was like this 4-pack. And I remember having those toys, and I had a little Gizmo toy on my desk, for the longest time.
Huh.
It was it was a plastic figurine,
Yeah.
And so it was just part of my. Oh, here we go.
Yeah,
I can see this being kind of a traumatic moment, I suppose.
Yeah, it's pretty grisly.
But I mean, if any kid watches this and is like, "Hey, I want to do that to Rover," I mean, get that kid some help.
Yeah. We're talking about the microwave.
Yeah.
People not watching along. And then also you can see the gremlin she stabbed moving.
I love
in the
that too. By the way,
background.
she grabs the second knife. That's really funny.
Yeah. But you see the guy still sort of struggling in the background with the knife in him. Apparently, they did film him struggling to get the knife out of him.
Okay.
And they were like, no, too far.
It's too much. Too far.
Too far. It is kind of funny, though. I know there's like a sliding scale or something as time marches on because, I mean, PG now is basically what you would think of as G when we were growing up.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
But it is kind of like, it does. I guess things have calibrated ever since the invention of PG-13. Like your Toy Stories are rated PG.
Right.
But it's amazing to think seeing this mom with a psycho knife, basically just stabbing this creature repeatedly in the same rating as a Toy Story movie.
I had that toy, that little robot right there.
The wind-up robot, really?
Mm-hmm. I had that robot.
Oh wow.
I remember that. I was like, man, sense memory. It was battery operated, but yeah.
Oh, okay. So you switch him on and then he moves.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's cool.
See, the great thing about the design of the Gremlins is that there's a real, it's not just Gleep Glop,
Mm-hmm.
There's this kind of artistic, there's a weird beauty to the design.
It really is. Yeah. Yeah, and its body makes sense.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I was reading about an earlier version too, where the movie, there was a version of the movie, a draft or something, where Billy was wielding a sword through town. It was like him, Corey Feldman character stuck with him, and then the Phoebe Cates character. It was like the trio, and he had the sword, and they were just going through town.
Probably the swords that they set up in the house. Right? Yeah.
You can kind of picture that version too. Almost feels like a Stranger Things kind of kids with makeshift homemade weapons fighting a supernatural force.
See, I kind of dig that, and I'd love to see somebody, like you said, like when you think about Stranger Things is not an excavation of some prior thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a new thing inspired by people's collective memories, right?
Yeah,
it's do that, do something new.
I would totally watch something like that.
Right.
I remember when Stranger Things was first announced.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the poster, and it was the kids on bikes thing. And I remember thinking I was going to be the only one watching it, which is laughable now. But I was like, oh, wow, they bullseye for me.
Yeah.
But it just, it proved that it's still a evocative formula. Everybody wants to watch that. Now, what is that robot again? Is that Lost in Space?
No, that's from Forbidden Planet. That's Robbie the
Forbidden
Robot.
Planet, yeah.
Yeah.
Not Danger. Well, so that one must have been inspired by this one then.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
Forbidden Planet, by the way, if you haven't seen it, it's a very good movie.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah. It stars Leslie Nielsen in a non-comedic role.
Ah.
So obviously when you can't help but be like, oh, that's Frank Drebin. That's hilarious. But despite that, it's very good.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the design of the Gremlins. We should shout out Chris Wallace, who actually designed them.
Mm-hmm.
It's remarkable. It's I think what he came up with was something that it stood the test of time. I believe it was Rick Baker who did the effects for the second one.
Yeah,
And with this one, all the Gremlins are the exact same model except for Stripe.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, with the next one, Baker was able to take the foundation of what they established here and do something, a little wonkier.
I think that was the appeal, right? If he was just going to be recreating a design, why hire Rick Baker? But he got to make all these, an array of personalities and different types and looks, and like a bat gremlin, and
I love it. It's in the movie.
Dude, the first time I saw that, it was it's brilliant. It's a brilliant idea, and the execution could not be more perfect.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Well, again, so we're talking about the Key and Peele sketch.
Yeah.
the fact that Joe Dante saw that and was cracking up, he's like, yeah, that's basically what it was. That's very funny to me.
And you have to imagine too, like, Peele being sort of the horror guy that he is, he probably loves that movie. Like, it's
exactly
probably done with affection,
Yeah.
See, and I love this kind of the humor throughout this movie. Like when the gremlin jumps into the pool here, it's not like he just goes in. They actually show a shot of him doing the cannonball pose and plugging his nose. You know what I mean? Like that, the cheekiness of it. That's what makes this so fun. And I love this image is just so creepy.
Oh, it's great. You know what's funny? I'm sitting there watching this specific scene as the swimming pool is bubbling up. And in my head, I'm like, I just know Brian loves this.
You really have my number. You're so like, but yes, because it's like a YMCA public swimming pool. That should be normal and safe. But then seeing it bubbling and these weird strobe lights going on underneath, that is my jam, man.
It's just a great shot. It's so effectively executed.
Yep. Here we go.
And here's Jonathan Banks. A.K.A. Mike Ehrmantraut.
Yep.
From Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul.
Yeah, and he's in Beverly Hills Cop the same year.
Same year? Man.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny, this scene is very similar to the scene in The Goonies, also written by Christopher Columbus, when Chunk is calling the police station and they're like, oh, right, sure. Like not believing him talking about the Fratellis, which is funny though, because then he's like, oh, you and your stories, about like those little creatures that get wet when you throw water on them. Like he references Gremlins in The Goonies.
The thing about these goddamn idiot cops here.
Yeah.
Because you tell me, once you see Gizmo, isn't that kind of like, okay, maybe we should listen to this kid?
Yeah, right. So this shot.
I love this. Look at that.
Stop motion. It's so like funny.
Yeah, they could never quite figure out how to make Gizmo walk.
Yeah.
And make it look good. But as far as the Gremlins, I think the way they pulled that off, that it's slightly from a distance, that stop motion, it has it looks real enough, but also unnerving enough,
Yeah, something about the staccato, stop motionness of it makes it a little like unnerving. Yeah, which is, I guess, stop motion is what Joe Dante wanted to do, and other people even proposed having a monkey and dressing it up like a gremlin, and I guess they tried it, but the monkey panicked. And which makes, speaking of Jordan Peele, makes me think of Nope. I mean, that's like a whole plot point. Yeah. Don't make real animals, especially monkeys, be a part of your TV show.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they might freak out. But this is fun. Like, you couldn't do this anymore. Well, I guess you'd pull the cable plug or something, but like messing with the TV antenna on the roof and somebody
pulls your modem router cable.
Yeah, yes, right, right. Yeah, you're right. But yeah, that's just something so fun. It just doesn't even register with me. But I guess there aren't TV antennas anymore on top of rooftops. But it's still, I mean, I remember that. So it's still kind of fun to see these little monsters swinging on it.
Yeah.
Something that I had on top of my house growing up.
Dick Miller has the most character actor face, right? Like,
yeah.
He just embodied a type.
Totally.
Now, this movie, based on this movie, Mr. Futterman is dead.
Yes, which always surprises me. You think they're going to get out and it just destroys their house, but this is pretty dark.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, because I remember watching the second one and being surprised he was in it, because I was like, I thought he died.
Well, supposedly, I read this. I did not hear it, but there's a news report in the movie.
Okay.
And you can hear them say that Futterman was taken to a hospital.
Okay, so that's at the very end.
Yeah, so they probably realized this is pretty intense, and so they decided to keep him alive, or them, hopefully, alive.
Well, yeah, because they're both in the next one.
Oh, they both are? Okay.
Yeah.
This immediately is like, oh, that's the church from Gilmore Girls. Look what's happened to me.
I think we need a Gilmore Gremlins, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I think there's a crossover opportunity, and they're both Warner Brothers properties. It's just that somebody's leaving money on the table.
Yeah.
Have Lorelai attacking Gremlins using a shovel as like a hatchet,
Dude,
something like that.
Yeah, right. And then like Luke shows up with like some contraption he's made out of. So like, yeah,
I'd watch it.
100% watch it. And then all the banter. Imagine the banter. It'd be so fun.
That's right.
But this is kind of funny how lo-fi this gag is here. With the gremlin messing with the traffic light, and we only hear the car crash. We don't like see anything.
That is and see this is why I was thinking about are the critters that Mr. Futterman talked about, were they gremlins? Because they're acting like those types of gremlins.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They're not just a malevolent horde; they're mischievous.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So those, that's why I was like, so were those real gremlins? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Let's get
Jonathan
Dante
Banks.
on
You know
the
how
line.
old he is in this movie?
Oh no, how old?
23. No, no, he's like 37.
Yeah, it's a different time. I don't mean this in any sort of negative way, but it just feels like people aged a little quicker. I don't know if it has to do with truly, like, not making a joke, but like even just like sunscreen or, just certain sorts of things that have changed over the years. But
but here's the thing. I wonder, like, what do my what do my students think of me?
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.
that's very true.
Right?
That's very true. I mean, I can't speak for my own face, but just when I see certain people on TV who are a certain age and then compare them to people of that same age in these sorts of movies, I do sometimes find it a little surprising. I mean, Wilford Brimley is the classic example of that.
That's right.
Where people like Paul Rudd is older than Wilford Brimley was in Cocoon. Gwen Stefani is either the same age or older now than Wilford Brimley in Cocoon. And that's just still shocking. So this sort of, this is kind of a dark little joke, having the woman on that chair that moves up and down the stairs and she flies out the window, which reminds me that I guess when they were looking for directors, they did look into Tim Burton.
Oh, interesting.
And some of this, you can definitely see Tim Burton having fun with this. And it would be interesting to see what parts of his voice he would bring into this, not that I'd prefer it. I do like what we have, but it's interesting.
Yeah, I wonder about that because I can definitely. Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one, right? Like, what would a Tim Burton Gremlins look like?
I'm sure it would have been a lot of fun, and you can imagine. I mean, his movie that everyone was watching in this moment was Frankenweenie. Kind of a horror comedy kind of thing. So you could see why they were like, "Huh, that's interesting."
Yeah.
But he hadn't made a movie yet, so I think they were nervous that this would be too much of an undertaking. I do love that, though, the Gremlins caroling there, and they have like their little hats and scarves and like little songbooks.
Yeah.
It's really funny.
So Polly Holliday, who plays Mrs. Deagle, she was Flo, the waitress on Alice.
I got to be honest. I know that reference, and I hear it referenced a lot, but I've
Kiss
never
My Grits.
seen
You've
that.
heard that, right?
See, again, I know what that is. I didn't know that was from that. That's just something I don't really know.
You know how old she is here?
How old?
47.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not kidding.
I'm gonna need a minute, Zachy. Man, I don't know. I don't know if this is like a certain sort of age where you just suddenly become obsessed with actors' ages in movies. comparing them to where you are, but it's I never get tired of it.
Ugh.
I do kind of love this sort of idea of these two cops who didn't believe the kid's story being in this car and sort of casually looking at all the horror around them like, hey, look at that Santa Claus. He's getting attacked by tiny little creatures. Like slowly dawning on them. Something kind of cartoony and funny about it. They're just rolling up their window. I've not seen a lot of behind the scenes footage of this. Do you know if that's out there? Like just seeing the puppeteers working all of this? That'd be really interesting.
I haven't seen any, but I suspect something's got to exist, right?
Yeah.
But we talked right past when Mrs. Deagle dies, but clearly a little nod to the Wicked Witch.
Very much. After Billy's dog.
After literally she says, I'll get you and your little dog too.
Yeah, I mean, she almost does. She says she's going to take the dog. And,
right.
Yeah. So here, maybe this is why we don't see the car crash earlier. They're like, we get one.
Yeah, that's right. That's the budget.
Yeah. It's kind of fun. You can see the little, I don't know, rig or whatever it is underneath the car that's put in place so it will flip over.
Yeah.
Which they'll probably paint out digitally. It's kind of fun. See this occasionally,
Yeah.
But yeah, the Deagle thing it's funny because they do paint her as an awful person and she does want to get the dog, but it is sort of jarring to see an old woman yelling in terror being thrown out a window.
I don't know, Brian. I think I'm okay with it. I'd have been okay with it even without all the stuff earlier.
It does make me wonder. I'm not, clamoring for the Snyder cut per se of this, but like I would be curious to see the full blown 2 hour plus just all the story threads and things that they had going on.
See, I want the Mrs. Deagle prequel where she comes to Kingston Falls as young and hopeful and she has a difficult marriage. Her husband goes off to war and dies. Like no Gremlins at all. Nothing to do with that Gremlins at all.
And she takes over the real estate business, and it's hardened her. She doesn't want to become hard, but it hardens her.
It would be like a secret Gremlins prequel. Like she'd be called like Beatrice or something. And that's like, and then at the very end, they're like, "What do you want to do now, Beatrice?" She's like, "I'm not Beatrice. I'm Deagle."
Yeah, call me Deagle.
Right. And then we hear the Gremlins, the Jerry Goldsmith the Gremlins rag come up. And
then like 3/4 of the audience goes, "Huh?"
Yeah.
Sort of like at the end of Split, where it revealed itself
yeah, exactly.
to be unbreakable. And it was like me and 3 other people in a full theater going, "Hey!"
Right?
Like no one else got it.
It's like the movie Pearl, right? Like if you happen to know it's a prequel to X,
right?
Otherwise, you're just like, oh, it's just about this deeply disturbed woman,
Right, right. But you know what? Frankly, I think after this, we should get in the car and drive over to Warner Brothers because I think we have an IP bonanza just ready to go.
The GCU, the Gremlins Cinematic Universe, we're ready. Yeah.
I know they have the animated series and I've heard it's pretty good. And I feel like, I don't know, why not? I mean, they're doing it to everything else. I think there's some fun to be had with this.
I think that definitely, like, I don't see any reason not to do something else with Gremlins. I am vehement that if Joe Johnston, hey, if he wants to direct it, that'd be great.
Sure.
But Joe Dante has to be involved in some way.
Absolutely. Because this is a unique tone. I think it needs to stay with this playful darkness.
So here's my question. We saw them drinking beer.
Yes.
But I thought the rule was don't get them wet.
See, because the dad even says he can't even drink water.
Right.
So then it made me wonder what he can drink.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can say, oh, don't get them, they can't be exposed to water. Okay, well then alcohol is different. But if the rule is don't get them wet, well, I mean, they're...
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Right? Shouldn't they be popping off and multiplying if they're drinking beer?
That's a good point, because later when the Stripe is at the fountain,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like the metamorphosis is done once they become a gremlin. Apparently they can reproduce too. So
Exactly.
this cracks me up.
Doesn't make sense, Brian. This is very funny.
Sort of the loner jazz man sort of guy.
This whole thing right here. Come on, that's hilarious. The
It's
puppet.
so funny. Me, 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 me. Yeah.
See, so the gremlins have some level of intelligence, obviously.
Yeah.
They're emulating people. So this is not that far removed tonally from what we see the gremlins doing in the second one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like this right here.
No, you're right. Like they take this and they're like, no, we're doing that.
This is the whole movie.
Yeah. Flashdance is what we're talking about here. This Flashdance thing. Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, the seeds of it are in here for sure.
Yeah.
And
like
really funny.
Famously, Joe Dante, because Warner Brothers was trying to get something off the ground with the Gremlins sequel.
Yeah.
Gremlins Go Hawaiian, I'm sure was in the mix. Probably.
That's a Warner Brothers go-to.
Yeah, that's when in doubt,
Yeah.
Batman Goes Hawaiian. I think that was something they considered.
I wish I had.
But they circle back around to Dante. He's like, fine, I'll do, but you let me do whatever I want. And they're like, fine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of the desperation of the condemned. They were like, fine, whatever it takes, And then unfortunately, that gamble didn't pay off. That's what irks me a little bit.
I wonder why that was. Was it a little too late?
I think it's too late. It was 6 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't feel too late to me. Like that's, I think I've said this before, right? Because you had Ghostbusters 2 in 89, you had Gremlins 2 in 90, and I wasn't like, oh, finally. I was like, oh, great, another one.
Or weirdly, was this just one of those things that just hit at the right time?
Just kind of a unicorn?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it was no fluke. It made in 1984 money. It made $150 million. It was the highest grossing Warner Brothers movie until Batman in 1989. So, I mean,
so people were going back again and again.
Yeah, it struck a chord.
Yeah, that's really interesting to me,
What's kind of interesting, I was reading, Howie Mandel did Gizmo's lines and a lot of other people, of course, did the Gremlins lines. But
Frank Welker is a Stripe, by the way.
Right. And Michael Winslow of Police Academy, he's one of the voices. The one gremlin that's like ring, ring, ring.
Oh, so just the Michael Winslow gremlin?
Yeah, wouldn't that be amazing? But no, apparently what they did was when they dubbed it for overseas, Howie Mandel and those actors like localized the dialogue that they were doing.
Oh,
so
interesting.
They did jokes that made sense in Germany, that made sense in Japan. And apparently in this bar scene, they dubbed the Gremlins to be singing German bar songs. Right? And so it's like it just kind of resonated everywhere. They found a really clever way to make everyone sort of connect with it and find the humor in it, even locally. So that's pretty genius.
Hey, it's a good way for them to make a little extra coin too.
Yeah.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. Everybody needs some variety in life. That's what I love about Chumba Casino. They know how to keep things fresh and exciting. All their games are free to play, like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire. You can claim free daily login bonuses, too. And they release new games every week. So spice things up with ChumbaCasino.com now for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
But we're in the bank here, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess there was like a scene. I think it was even filmed, or maybe it was.
Yeah, it's filmed. Yeah, with
Judge
Jerry.
Reinhold. Yeah, we get like payoff. Yeah,
he's like locked himself in the vault, and he's gone a little cuckoo bananas.
Yeah. So, but again, I mean, you can see why a writer would write that. It makes sense. You set this guy up, but I think they realized what we're doing here, and it's like, nah, just keep going with, the creatures.
Like I wouldn't have complained if they kept that scene in. I don't think the movie loses anything because you're not like, well, what happened to Jerry?
Yeah.
But I think just as just sort of putting a button on that character, I think it wasn't the worst thing.
Yeah. Oh no. Same. And it might have even, if Billy had no confidence at the beginning or something, and then through this adventure he has gained confidence and he's able to tell off this guy who bullies him at work. I could see that being satisfying.
Okay, so let's talk about Kate's monologue here.
Yes.
About her dead dad. Now, let me first say, her dad, kind of an idiot.
Yes.
So, I think we have to acknowledge, at the heart of this horrible tragedy is her dad was an objectively stupid individual.
A grown man.
Yeah.
Thinking it's a good idea to go down a chimney.
Yes.
And pretending he's Santa Claus. Bad idea.
Right. So it's this whole long thing about how, they found her dad's body in the, thing, and that's why she hates Christmas. And the studio was like, no, you have to cut that. And Spielberg was like, I don't know about that. But he left it to Joe Dante.
I really admire that.
Yes.
Yeah. Spielberg also didn't like it, but he's like, well, it's your movie.
Yeah.
I mean, that's talk about a confident producer. Like, I picked you for a reason. It's your movie. If you like it, I don't like it, but if you like it, that's your movie. Well, leave it in.
It is very jarring.
It is one of the only times I do, feel like after the action is kicked in, the movie kind of slows to a stop. Just so she can tell that story.
You know what'd be funny is after that, she finishes the story, and then we get that reaction from Billy, and after a beat, he's just like very quiet. He's like, "I'm sorry, I called you a Hindu."
Yeah, right. You know what though? When I say slows to a stop, I think it's in the execution. I think it was throwing me off that as she's telling this clearly emotional story that she's finally ready to tell, he's like half paying attention.
He's like barely listening. Exactly.
Yeah, which is kind of weird.
Well, like I'll tell you, because he didn't expect it like that. Who has a story like that? You know what I mean?
Touche, but I think character-wise, it would have been nice to see him realize like, oh, she's like opening up to me. And then the thing earlier, now I see why there's this, like, she's a little haunted. And then, this should be like then where he pulls her close and like they connect or something. Cause I don't know.
I'll tell you what I love though, is the second one specifically makes fun of that moment.
I don't remember.
Yeah. Like, well, if you're going to watch it, but it's as if Dante himself is like, yeah, I'm going to like take the piss out of that,
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, you could imagine that being some sort of like urban legend or something. It probably
I'm sure it
right?
is. I'm sure it is. Yeah.
Oh, it's like, yeah.
I'm just saying that dad, kind of a Darwin Award.
Yeah.
The gene pool of favor.
That's a good point. I was reading also, because I do remember this, but in the second movie, or I should say with this movie, Leonard Maltin, who is the film critic for Entertainment Tonight, didn't like this movie.
Yes.
Right? He called it icky and gross. And so then he makes a cameo in the second movie.
Yeah, the Gremlins murder him in the second one.
Yeah, criticizing the first movie, and then the Gremlins kill him, which is, what a good sport.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
That's funny. Leonard Maltin, legend.
Yeah, I still you got me the very last Leonard Maltin film guide.
Yep.
I still have it sitting. I'm looking at it right now. It's on my shelf.
Yeah, it just reminds me of a time.
It's just a piece of history, right?
Sort of like a pre-internet thing where it was like a movie guide where he had these little mini reviews for,
and that guy reviewed everything.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's just this fat little book that just kept getting fatter every year.
Yeah.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. Everybody needs some variety in life. That's what I love about Chumba Casino. They know how to keep things fresh and exciting. All their games are free to play, like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire. You can claim free daily login bonuses, too. And they release new games every week. So spice things up with ChumbaCasino.com now for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
This is so adorable, this execution. So they're in the movie theater now. The Gremlins and Snow White just started playing, and they're all like, teasing each other, whatever. But then all of a sudden, they slowly but surely become captivated. And then now they're like bobbing their heads to the hi-ho. Like, this gets me every single time. It's so funny. That's what's so great too, right? They're not these like mindless killers.
Right, exactly.
Like you were saying earlier, they have personalities and they have senses of humor, as twisted as it is, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you referred to Ghoulies earlier, right? Which turned into its own little franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very clearly inspired by Gremlins.
Right.
But it lacked the, I mean, that was always going to be kind of a niche thing.
Yeah.
And that's what Spielberg understood, is there was an opportunity to make, like, this, you have to imagine that this was a gateway movie to more, extreme horror.
For sure. For younger audiences, yeah.
Right, but it plays for people who don't like horror, which that's you and me for the most
kind of
part.
us, yeah. Yeah, this is the particular type of horror I kind of delight in, where it's like I like spooky, I like The Shining and those sorts of things, but like this where there's a little cheekiness to it, or I don't know. Like I've said it a million times, but the something crazy in your backyard,
mm-hmm.
and using your understandable resources, resources that I have in my own tool shed to fight a sinister force. I find that fun. Right.
Yeah, it is a shame. We don't really get movies like this anymore, it feels like,
No.
I feel like that the room in the marketplace has sort of just been carved out.
Yeah, or everything, it can't be, it has to fit into 4 neat boxes. This one feels like a subversion of a box.
Yeah.
Or playing with the notion of a certain box. And it's like, no. Well, then you might lose these people, or you won't get those people to go to, it's like, no, everything kind of has to fit into a box.
Yeah.
Algorithmically, I'm sure that has something to do with it. You look at it, the algorithm, and you're like, well, could an algorithm predict this movie? Probably not.
Right.
This movie has to exist to prove that it is successful.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Kind of sad. That's fun. The animated shadows on the screen. And then there. So they take that gag to the 10th degree,
yes.
in the next one, right? Where it's here, it's just a really, I thought it was a bigger deal in this one, where they claw through the screen.
Right.
Which would look cool if you were watching this in a movie theater.
Right.
But then in the second one, it's like literally the movie stops and the Hulk Hogan yells at them to stop messing with the movie.
Time capsule.
I know.
No, what you just said about the algorithm, I think that's very illuminating, right? Because that's the creative space we're in now, where, hey, pour one out for Montgomery Ward, first place I ever worked.
Hey, yeah.
I think that we're at a place now where creative decisions are algorithmically driven or algorithmically allowed.
Yes.
And we see how, so much of what this movie came down to Steven Spielberg and Joe Dante, between them, following their muse in these interesting ways. And then, wouldn't you know it, most unlikely, it becomes the 4th highest grossing movie of the year.
Yeah.
Who could have predicted that?
Yeah. Not a computer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the example I heard years ago that I always think about is if it's 1977 and you just had Jaws come out, what's the movie you think is going to be the biggest hit? Something at sea, Orca, whales, whatever. Yeah. But what is it? It's a space opera.
Yeah.
It's like an algorithm would not have predicted that, but that's George Lucas, his muse, he was, he had a gut feeling about something that people would love this thing, and he was right, but you couldn't have predicted it. And he instead of making like a shark monster movie, his space movie is still raking in millions and millions today. And amazing. So you're missing out on potential IP to exploit later on.
Yeah.
By not letting people create new things.
Well, and it's like we were talking about Christopher Nolan earlier, right? And it's like right now we're probably at the tail end of like the superhero trend, right?
Sure.
And yet no one has been able to do what he did with The Dark Knight.
Uh-huh.
Because it's the marriage of the concept and the creator.
Yes. Yep.
It's
If
not
only
just,
Nolan could have made that version of that
exactly
movie. Yes.
right.
Yes.
And I think that's just as applicable here, right? I mean, but conceptually, this is a pretty straightforward horror flick, but Joe Dante has this touch of madness that makes it sweet and funny and idiosyncratic, with the Kate's dead dad monologue, and all this stuff that you say, well, this is a product of this storyteller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what everyone sparks to. The idiosyncrasies, like you're saying,
Yeah. And I think that's why, to some extent, this movie is still watched to whatever extent it is watched, or still known, still remembered to some degree,
Yeah. I mean, sticking again with supernatural or in the suburbs or a knowable area, it's kind of fun then seeing like a department store being taken over.
Yeah.
And using all the resources of a department store. Like the chainsaw and the baseball bat. That's a really good little gag there, I think.
I think so.
Because it's stopping him, but it's also the saw is cutting through. Like you have a limited amount of time that bat's going to work. I always thought that was very clever.
Yeah.
Apparently they came up with that while they were there, just looking at the things that they had.
That's great.
Yeah. We get a little E.T.
nod
here.
This bit right here.
Yeah.
And Bugs Bunny, of course, Warner Brothers.
Yep. In more ways than one. I mean, obviously, we literally see an E.T. doll, but that's a gag that's in E.T.
That's right, exactly. Yeah.
Where he's hiding amongst stuffed animals.
So even here, you see Dante's love of the Looney Tunes characters.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, I miss department stores like this.
I know. And maybe that's why I won't speak for you, but I love Target.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of like the vestigial remnant of what we used to have, right? Like,
yeah, because you go in for one thing.
That shit right there scares the pants off me.
The saw blade.
The saw blade.
Yeah,
it's freaking terrifying. Anyway,
yeah.
sorry.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, you were saying.
I love him on the tricycle.
That's great. That's a cool effect, right?
It's very cool effect, and that's this movie.
Yeah.
I'm afraid of that thing, but it's also kind of adorable seeing it on a tricycle, like going around creating terror. No, I was just saying about Target. Yeah, you go in for whatever, a hammer or something, and then you start looking at books, and then you're like, oh, maybe I could buy a hat.
Right.
It's records and movies or groceries even, it's great. Target.
This commentary track brought to you by Target.
Exactly. So
this gets to what you talk about all the time, right? Where you introduce something supernatural, supernormal into suburbia, and what better example than this, right? Is Billy's in a sporting goods section.
Mm-hmm.
He's just baseball bat, whatever's around, and I love this. Stripe's got the crossbow,
and
that's terrifying,
Mm-hmm. Yep, but something you could get at a sporting good store.
I used to have this radio, by the way.
Did you really? That boombox?
Yeah. It was. Yeah, I had it all the way until I lived in Chicago.
Wow, that's cool.
Man, I used to walk around with it on my shoulder,
walking down the street,
blasting, Peter Pan
Fight
songs.
the Power.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course. Yeah, that.
But yeah, this is great. I mean, even that was a cool shot from over the gremlin's shoulder as he's racing toward him with the chainsaw.
Mm-hmm.
Man, but I was reading about how much the puppeteers were suffering making this movie.
Oh, interesting.
And I mean, it must have been a nightmare. That's adorable. The Barbie Ferrari thing.
Well, and I love that they set this up earlier because you have Gizmo watching Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Mm-hmm.
The Clark Gable movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. And now I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun, Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free and each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Indianapolis Speedway, I think it's called.
Yeah. So
they kind of they do something similar in the next one where he's watching Rambo.
Oh yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, it's good light. Yeah, that's cool. Getting dragged away by the chainsaw.
It drags away.
Yeah. You know, this does remind me of a certain sort of feeling that I'm going to try to put into words, but like with Spielberg, or it especially makes me think of him, where he found that balance. Oh, we talked about it, I think, about with Jurassic Park, where he's introducing, if you take away a certain sort of element, it is straight horror. But he does keep the horrifying elements of a dinosaur, chomping a guy off of a toilet.
Yeah.
You know, or a monster with a chainsaw trying to saw a boy. But then he adds in a little cute creature in a Barbie Corvette. And there's like whimsy. You know, like it reminds you can laugh. It reminds you you're having fun.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I feel like Spielberg was the master of that. And in Jurassic Park, you know, where you still got the wisecracks. You got Jeff Goldblum saying the sort of funny lines and the whatever. And it's like, he allows you to catch your breath and doesn't just pummel you over the head with intensity. He's like, he gives you intensity more than some people might expect. But then he keeps reminding you you're having fun. And so you get to exhale and kind of nervous chuckle to yourself. And then you walk out with this really rounded out experience of horror / fun. Yeah. I always thought he was just the master of that.
Yeah, it's a kind of it's a magic trick, you know?
Yeah. And not everybody has those proper gut instincts. They go too far this or too far that. But he knows how to ride that line just right.
You know what's interesting is when we look at like the canon of Steven Spielberg presents movies in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So you got this, you got Back to the Future, you got Goonies, what's Poltergeist, right? It is interesting how, well, let's put Poltergeist to the side for 1 second, but like the movies are very distinctly the product of their director.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to confuse, like this has Spielbergian influences, but it's clearly a Joe Dante movie.
Totally.
Same with Goonies, etc. And I would say Poltergeist, to me, does not feel like a Spielberg movie. It feels like Tobe Hooper.
Yeah, I would say only in camera work, but yeah.
Right, but it's weird how that one really got pegged as, no, Spielberg ghost directed it.
Yeah.
Which is weird, kind of, you know?
Yeah, totally. But the tone itself.
Yes.
It feels like, Tobe Hooper.
Yeah, and this is probably the goriest part of this movie.
Yeah, this is pretty horrifying.
When you see Stripe sort of decompensating over here. But my point is, like, I think Spielberg was very good at, that's nightmare juice right there. So yeah. If you're a 5-year-old, that shit gonna stay with you.
Yeah.
But Spielberg was very good at being the blocker and sort of keeping the studio at bay because he was Steven effing Spielberg and letting the directors that he had brought on do their thing.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, I want to be clear. Like, I mean, I'm commenting on that line that I think Spielberg does so well, you know, with the horror.
Yeah, sorry.
Whatever. I want to make it clear. I don't think he ghost directed this anyway. I mean, this is very much a Joe Dante movie.
Yeah. So I wasn't
feel his influence,
implying that you were saying that. Sorry.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I got to give Dante his props on this. This is clearly a Joe Dante movie.
That was the genius of Steven Spielberg during this era, was he found the right people to do these things, you know?
Yeah, his Zemeckis's and his Dante's, and
that, what a great effect when you see this the skeleton just kind of just
deflate.
What a cool practical effect, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, like the bubbling there as it's slowly dying.
That's great.
And this is just, and it's so funny too, because now you can imagine, and I'm sure it could be fun, but you could do a lot more. You can make a much bigger climax. But there's something so visceral about don't let that thing get near the fountain.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then it does. Oh no. You know, and so then what do? You just, all they do is they get a shaft of light on it, but it's the way that it's executed at the last second. And it's so thrilling, and seeing, you know, Gizmo in his car fling up and pull the thing, you know, it doesn't have to be a huge set piece,
right?
You know, in scope, it's just the tension is perfectly thrilling enough.
Yeah.
I just missed it. I guess there was that newscast, but maybe there.
Yeah, no mention of the Futtermans.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I had read that somewhere, so I can't back that up.
I mean, it's not explicitly stated that they are dead in the film.
That's true.
We just see the you know, the snowplow coming at them, and then it cuts to outside. So there's room, you know. We don't see him impaled or anything. So
Right. Oh wait, now I want to see, because he's still talking. Wow.
Oh yeah, he's still.
But yeah, so this shopkeeper let himself in to their home.
Well, it's like, how did he know where they lived too?
That is a great point, because even the boy wouldn't know.
He has mysterious Chinese powers, you know, like Mr. Miyagi's mysterious Japanese powers.
There you go, where he can clap his hands. And,
yeah.
But this is a nice ending. You know, I do kind of like that. You can imagine a version where you're like sad, or you can a test audience like, well, I don't want Billy and Gizmo to be separated, but this feels right. It's like, I told you the rules. You proved you're not responsible. So it feels almost like a Twilight Zone episode where there's a lesson at the end. You're not ready for something like this, so we have to take it away from you. You know?
It'd be funny if he comes in and suddenly he's like, "You white people ruin everything," and it's like it goes in this really weird racial dimension at the end. Wow, okay, they took a turn, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I'm really, really sorry. Like,
first you drop a bomb on Hiroshima, you know, like, like what? No. This the thing that Gizmo says at the end.
Yeah, like,
it's
bye,
like
Billy.
The cutest thing ever.
Yeah. That is nice. So you do, even if he is being taken away, you know, they truly bonded.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bye, Billy.
Oh, so Quentin Tarantino talked about the time he met Joe Dante.
Oh, okay.
He was like 17 years old, and he was just writing to movie directors, because of course Quentin Tarantino did that, right?
Totally.
And he's like, "Oh, I'm writing a book about movie directors," and so Joe Dante invited him to visit while they were making Gremlins.
Really?
Yeah. And,
so young Tarantino was on this set.
I think this is during post.
Okay.
And so they were showing him. They were showing Dante the effects for the sequence coming up where Key Luke is walking away, and it's a matte, you know, it's a process shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Oh yeah, come watch it," you know. And Tarantino talked about how, you know, they're watching the scene where the grandfather's walking away, and the effects people are like, "Oh, if you want, we can add like a shot, like we can add like Santa and his reindeer to like the skyline kind of thing, you know." And Joe Dante was like, "Don't tell me stuff like that, because I might just think it's a good idea." And I like that story. Like right here, you would see like Santa, you know.
Yeah.
And I like that story because to me it puts in context. First of all, like Tarantino just happens to be there when that's like quite remarkable, right?
Yeah.
But it contextualizes his sense of whimsy.
Totally. Yeah.
Right. Like he viewed this as like a fairy tale, you know, and the wraparound of Hoyt Axton's narration makes this whole thing like, did it even really happen? Maybe it's just a tall tale that Hoyt Axton told, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, especially his folksy demeanor or delivery. You know,
Yeah.
it just sort of it does. Yeah, it sounds like a neighborhood legend. Or
Yeah,
something.
exactly. Just
You know,
like
people
the old thing
said-
about the man who tried to climb down the chimney. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's really funny though. You're totally right. I love that about Joe Dante. Like
Peter Cullen too. He was one of the Gremlins.
Wow.
Megatron and Optimus Prime were both in this.
It's amazing. They are great though. I like that they don't necessarily speak. They just kind of repeat words, like one or two words. It feels.
Well, I love yeah.
yeah.
I know Sean always does that.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Gremlins, Brian.
Yeah, what a fun, quaint little classic.
It really is. This does not get talked about. Right around this time of year, everyone's arguing over the proper Christmas action movie or whatnot.
Yeah.
You got your Die Hards and your Lethal Weapons. Nobody talks about Gremlins.
Well, and that's why we did it. We've got Christmas upon us, the holiday season, and we thought this would be a fun sort of holiday themed movie to put out as our little gift to you.
And it's a little PSA. Don't try to climb down the chimney dressed as Santa. It's not worth it.
That's right. Please.
It's not worth traumatizing your kids.
Absolutely not.
But hey, I hope what this also means is that we'll get to come back at some point and talk through the second one.
I can't wait because, like I said, I don't remember it very well. And now that I really understand what it is, I think I will be on its wavelength.
Yeah.
More so than probably when I first saw it.
Well, that's a conversation I look forward to having at some point.
Yeah.
We mentioned again. We mentioned before about Jerry Goldsmith, but they have the complete score. It's available on Apple Music and stuff. It is fantastic. It's just it's a very good score. It's one of Goldsmith's best.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the Gremlins, the Gremlins rag, that theme, it is, at least for me, it's very, very distinctive and it's very emblematic of that era for me,
Absolutely. And now that I'm looking at the credits and the rights and the songs and whatever, we didn't really comment on how crazy it is that Snow White is in this movie.
Yeah, right. That's surprising that they got permission for that.
Yeah, that feels also like a Spielberg-y height of his powers sort of thing, because if you're making Ghoulies and you want them to watch Snow White, you can bet that Disney's not going to give that to them,
That's a good point.
But here you can get the exact precise gag that you want. Watching them sing along with the Seven Dwarfs because Spielberg says make it so.
That's and when back then when he said it happened.
Yeah, and that's how we got Roger Rabbit just a couple of years later. 4 years later.
I forgot about Roger Rabbit. Yeah,
where they mixed the Warner Brothers and Disney characters because no one else could have pulled that off.
See, Roger Rabbit, that's a good one, right? Like that is obviously there is a Spielberg influence, but it is Zemeckis through and through.
Totally. Yeah.
But hey, let us know your thoughts on Gremlins. You can email us at moviefilmpodcast@gmail.com. You can also hit like on our Facebook page, facebook.com/moviefilmpodcast. If you like what we're doing, please go to Apple Music and leave a review, leave a star rating. Every little bit helps. We also have a Patreon, Brian.
That's right. At patreon.com/moviefilmpodcast, you can find every commentary we've ever done without any ads and every episode of the regular show and commentary we'll do in the future absolutely ad-free for only $5 a month.
Plus occasional special episodes that are Patreon only.
That's right. Yeah. The when we were recording this, the Superman James Gunn trailer just dropped this past week, and we thought, well, we were going to talk about it anyway, just as friends. Why not make like an extra little recording and have that be a bonus feature available exclusively for Patreon subscribers? So we enjoy doing that, and I can definitely see us doing more things like that in the future.
I would expect more, yeah. As for me, if you're looking for me online, you can find me on social media at Zacky's Corner. That's ZAKIS Corner. Brian's also got his stuff going on.
Yeah. Episodes I've written of Puppy Dog Pals and Young Jedi Adventures are available on Disney+.
There we go. With that, on behalf of my partner, Brian Hall, my name is Zachy Hassan. This has been our movie film commentary track for Gremlins. We'll catch you next time. Thanks, folks.
ET is Ryan Seacrest here. People always say it's good to unwind, but that's easier said than done. The exception, Chumba Casino. They actually make it easier done than said, or at least the same. Chumba Casino is an online social casino with hundreds of casino-style games like slots and blackjack. Play for fun. Play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Sign up now and collect your free welcome bonus at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.